Hi, I'm Jay Edidin.
And I'm Miles Stokes.
And we're the hosts of Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men, a weekly podcast all about the ins, the outs, and the retcons of comics' greatest superhero soap opera.
We're also the hosts of Jay and Miles Review the X-Men,
which you're watching right now,
where we talk about the X books that come out each week.
This week we've got 2 weeks worth of books, January 4th and 11th of 2017. Actually, I think this might be our first video reviews of 2017.
I do believe, in fact. Also, we were hoping to do that from Books with Pictures like we normally do, but Portland is currently made of snow.
Yeah, we are legitimately snowed in at the moment. It's very exciting. I feel like we should open the window or the blinds and just show them. Is it going to be visible? No, it's not. Never mind. There's a lot. You're going to have to trust us. It's about a foot of snow, which is a lot for the Pacific Northwest.
Yes. But, neither rain nor snow, etc. So let's talk about some X-Men.
First up, from January 4th, we've got Old Man Logan number 16, written by Jeff Lemire with art by Andrea Sorrentino and colors by Marcello Maiolo. After a brief and wildly successful stint in the realm of slapstick horror, Old Man Logan has decided to stick with genre hopping and made its next move to space horror. And oh man, I could not be happier about this.
Yeah, this is my favorite issue of Old Man Logan in a long time. And I mean, we've talked before in comparing...
Really?
Yeah.
Giant monsters?
Giant monsters were great.
Dracula's Miles?
This is better for me.
Right.
Now, I mean, we've talked about how with All New Wolverine and Old Man Logan, like, one of the reasons that All New Wolverine is typically a better book is that it genre hops all over the place, so we get to see different sides of Laura.
It tone shifts, too.
Yes, that as well.
Which is not as in a tone shifter, but in shifting tone. Never mind. Anyway.
But yeah, so Old Man Logan doing so, I mean, I don't know about you, but like for me, the whole let's be in the present day, then let's cut to Logan's past / our future and have things be parallel. Like it worked for a while, but it was getting kind of old by the time we were doing The Last Ronin. This
uses a similar motif, but in a very different way, and it does it with a lot of very deliberate callbacks to one of our mutual favorite arcs of X-Men, the Brood Saga.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, that was, I think, I don't know, for me, like that was the first time that Wolverine really felt like fully Wolverine.
Well, it was the first time we got first-person narration in his voice. I remember that in an X book. And this is Old Man Logan. And I mean, first of all, it's a great approach to a character and scenario. And second, it's one that this particular creative team is really well suited to. One of my ongoing semi-complaints about Sorrentino is that he's a very mannered artist. And he's a mannered artist in ways that feel like screenshots to me a lot. They've that kind of cinematic still. Now, this story is a fundamentally cinematic story, and it's a fundamentally cinematic genre. And this is a place where Sorrentino's leanings in that direction work just beautifully, and instead of, kind of taking me out of the narrative, actually immersed me better in it. They feel like a degree of narrative awareness, and also kind of a wink and a nod to the antecedents. There's some really good, as there should be in any space horror story, but especially any story involving the Brood, there's some really good, alien homage in here.
Yeah, there are a couple shots that could be straight out of the Nostromo.
Yeah, and to the cinematography, not just to the monsters, which is, again, nice to see. Man, it's so weird how much shorter I am than you when we're sitting down. Like, that always throws me.
You're all legs, I'm all torso. I barely have legs. I just have treads, like Bonebreaker of the Reavers, just like that. And that's a Flash fact. We should probably talk about the
It sounds
timeline.
more like a rock fact to me.
Maybe it's a rock fact. That's a rock fact.
Sounds more like a rock fact.
We should probably talk about the way the timeline is handled here, because we do get some flashback, flash forward, sort of.
Well, this is yeah, I don't think we should actually, because I think that's heavily into spoiler territory. I think we should just say it's interesting, and it's an interesting spin on the narrative structure we've seen in a lot of previous Old Man Logan comics that echoes it without recreating it.
Yeah, there's a nice little fake out where you think the book is doing things...
Dude.
Anyway, it's cool.
There's only so far you can talk around something before you've created a precise negative image of it.
Well, what I do want to talk about is the fact that the current Alpha Flight is here in some of the space scenes, and I love that.
Well, because space.
Well, right, but also just, I don't know, I love this incarnation of Alpha Flight as, like, the guardians of Earth in a space station run by Carol Danvers and Abigail Brand. Like, I've been following the Captain Marvel book, and that's been one of my favorite things about it, seeing, like, Aurora and Sasquatch and Puck just being their old awesome selves in a totally new setting. So I like that Old Man Logan feels like it's set more in the Marvel Universe now, rather than just doing its own little, very limited thing. That worked for a while, but now it's time to expand, and the book is doing so. Our first book of this week is Inhumans vs. X-Men number 2, written by Jeff Lemire and Charles Soule, with pencils by Laniil Francis Yu, inks by Jerry Alanguilin, and colors by David Curiel. So we really, really liked Inhumans vs. X-Men number 0 and number 1. And this one is, as a chapter, it's fine. As an individual issue, I was left a little cold.
I figured out why, like while you were looking at your notes.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Emma Frost.
That's part of it. Yeah, I mean, we don't have Emma at all in this issue.
I am here for two things. Emma Frost, David Curiel's colors. I mean, everything else in it is good too, but those are the things that I'm really showing up for.
Yeah, this issue is, the big assault on New Attilan, the big assault by the various X teams who, I gotta say, it's cool seeing them together on the Inhumans headquarters city.
Is it Attilan or Attilan?
I always said Attilan, but I don't know.
Me neither.
I mean, I do like the scene with Magneto and Attilan, though. That's
no, that is pretty.
Or Professor Xavier. I still don't know if we're right about it being Xavier versus Xavier. I've heard both.
So I pronounce it Xavier because that's the way it's pronounced in all of the audio-based versions. So it's the way it's pronounced in various animated series. It's the way it's pronounced in the movies.
I also like to think that, even if it was Xavier, he would have changed it to Xavier when he founded the X-Men. So he could go like, hey, I'm Professor X. Xavier, eh? You see what I'm doing there?
Well,
I think he's doing that.
I think he's terrible. He's a jerk.
He's dead now, so whatever.
Well, do you think that's going to stop him?
Nice, deep cut. So, anyway.
I mean, but accurate on multiple levels. Speaking of which, I'm just going to go ahead and say, because it's a snow day and everything's weird, if you haven't seen the movie Bubba Hotep, you should see that movie.
Yeah.
It's really good. I haven't seen it in a really long time, but it remains one of my favorite, just sort of odd. Yeah, that's what I want Old Man Logan to feel like.
Bubba Hotep?
Yeah.
An aging Elvis in a nursing home fighting a mummy with JFK?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, okay.
Like that mix of horror, that genre blend, and that pathos and statement on, the way that movie is just like a really good statement on aging in America, in addition to everything else, and looking at, what it means to be an iconic figure past their heyday, who people don't recognize as such.
And mummies sucking out people's souls through their butts?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the really important part.
So Jeff Lemire, if you're watching, that would be our recommendation. You can take it or leave it. Your call. You should take it, though.
Trust us, we're experts.
So Inhumans vs. X-Men, meanwhile.
Not bad. It's fun. It's a lot of fun fight scenes and concepts. The art is great. The colors are great. The writing's not bad, but it doesn't have the sort of coming home, brilliant, heisty, character-focused stuff that we loved in 0 and 1.
Right. I mean, it is a good set of fight scenes, and we do get some good character beats. We see what Medusa and Storm are like, not only as, diplomatic leaders, where we've seen them before, but as battle leaders, as frontline leaders. And I think the characters are handled well. They feel about right.
I really like the way that you lays out fight scenes and draws characters.
Oh, you. Why you? Not me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Linnell Francis, line artist on this book. And breaks and plays with grids. Like I think it's a very well crafted comic, and the visuals are something I enjoy a lot. Honestly, this is one of those books that I read and think, wow, I just really like to see all these pages blown up to poster size.
That'd be pretty rad, yeah.
Yeah, and Curiel continues to just knock it out of the park with the colors. He has been, from the start, the strongest aspect of a very strong book, and that continues here.
Yeah. Now, character-wise, so we talked about how the leaders feel about right. A couple characters don't, and it reminds me a little of Avengers vs. X-Men or the first Civil War. The less said about Civil War II, the better. I don't like it. But in the sense that you have characters who, they look right, and their dialogue seems right, but their actions just seem a little off in service to the maybe not fully believable fight we're having.
Well, that's the biggest weakness of this series, narratively, I think, is that it's set up as the, both sides have valid points, but they don't. Like, the Inhumans are wrong here, and the Inhumans are unquestionably and very clearly wrong, and writing them symmetrically, like, in Avengers versus X-Men, I feel like you could almost kind of make it a case for the Avengers, like they were making a lot of bad decisions, but the reasoning kind of made sense. The Inhumans are just super wrong.
But it seems like in this issue, Lemire and Soule almost overcorrect, because we see some of the X-Men, and we'll see this even more in Uncanny, which we'll talk about shortly. We see some of the X-Men just acting like really, really bloodthirsty. Specifically in this issue, we have Sabretooth and Wolverine being way more murdery than I would expect them to be in a situation where they're basically trying to disable rather than kill.
Well, I mean, the X-Men have had their eras of bloodlust. I'm thinking of the immediately pre-Australia,
Sure.
let's move into a sewer and threaten to kill everyone. X-Men.
Yeah, well, there's that, but I mean, the specific characters chosen here, I mean, Victor Creed and Laura Kinney are characters who have largely been defined in recent years by their decisions to, chill out a little as far as the murder. And so having those characters just go right back into it because they're pissed at the Inhumans, that part I didn't buy.
Yeah, no, that's valid. Feelings are heightened. I think Victor's got a much, much better excuse than Laura, and that's something we'll delve into in more depth when we talk about the accompanying issue of Uncanny X-Men.
I'd also like to point out that Illyana Rasputin in this issue, her whole let's send people to Limbo to incapacitate him. Apparently, if you have blank versus X-Men in the title, then that is Illyana Rasputin's role. That's just she's come to accept it. When we later on have the Power Pack versus the X-Men, or the Great Lakes Avengers versus the X-Men, or the Secret Six versus the X-Men, or are they DC
the Secret
or Marvel?
Six is DC.
Sinister Six. Let's just go with them. Then yes, off to Limbo. Illyana's just a one-way taxi to Helltown. Good times.
Next up is All New Wolverine number 16, written by Tom Taylor, with art by Nick Varela and colors by Michael Garland. This is a good book. It continues to be a good book, but I have one major quibble with this issue.
I think I know what it is.
Lack of Jonathan.
Legit.
Jonathan does not appear in this issue, and I cannot get behind that approach. It's a solid issue. It's good otherwise, but I mean, honestly, I don't understand why Jonathan didn't appear here.
Well, I mean, he's right there in the title. He's the all-new Wolverine. He's the newest of the Wolverines.
Yeah, that's probably true.
It's his book, really.
Actually, I think Gabby might technically be younger.
Oh, that's a good point.
Well, it depends. We don't know how old Jonathan is.
Tom Taylor confirmed that Gabby was fast-aged, and so she's actually pretty young.
Tom Taylor said that Jonathan said hi to our cat once.
That's true. He did. It was pretty great.
Yeah.
Our cat just squawked.
Our cat probably squawks back. She's been hanging out in my room all day, curled up in a ball, purring, with her tail over her head.
It's been very cold.
It's cold, yeah.
If I had a tail, I'd put it over my head.
Right? I mean, I'm sure she'd put her tail over your head if you positioned it right.
Yeah, maybe. But anyway, so this is a chapter in Enemy of the State 2, where bad things happen to Laura. Real bad things.
Yeah, and they continue to happen. I am liking Nick Varela better here than I did on her first issue. Like, her art is really starting to grow on me, and I think she's got a much, much better beat on the characters here than she did initially, which is great. I'm starting to get that distinction between Gabby and Laura that worked so well with previous artists, where they've got, very much the same face, but very different body language and very different expressions. And she's starting to really, I think, get more fluidly into the feel of that. I also really, really like her fight scenes. I think they're very deftly drawn.
I really like the way she draws Roughhouse. I don't know why. Roughhouse looks dumb a lot of the time. He just looks awesome in this. He looks like a guy that could very well have been a runaway Asgardian. Also, the line, "Do you know what's under this beard?" and the response, "More beard?" is some of my favorite dialogue of the last many months.
That's an entirely reasonable guess.
Probably true. She's beard all the way down.
I also like Roughhouse as a good bad guy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Speaking of good bad guys and bad good guys and things like that, so this issue, I feel like, is solid but unremarkable to a great extent. It's little bit spread out, and it feels like a lot of its purpose is to get us to the reveal on the last panel and to the reintroduction of a character who figured very prominently in the supporting cast in the ongoing X-23 title. So there's gonna be a spoiler right here. Fast forward.
It's on the next cover.
Oh, it's on the next cover. Yeah. Never mind. Whatever. If you're one of the people who's managed to assiduously avoid that. Yeah, so Gambit's coming back. And
he's Laura's best bestie.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. You understand, there is one context in which Gambit is... No, two contexts now in which Gambit is one of my favorite characters. One of them is Deadpool v. Gambit. Mm-hmm. And the other one is when he is being a backup character to Laura Kinney.
He was so good in X-23.
Yeah. The version of Gambit written by Marjorie Liu is the version of Gambit that I care about. Genuinely. Legit. And given the ways in which Tom Taylor has taken cues from that run, and the directions he specifically developed Laura, I'm really optimistic that that's the Gambit we're going to be seeing here. Speaking
of characters from Laura's old runs, let's talk a little about Kimura, because I go way back and forth on her, and I was wondering what your take was.
She's a big jerk.
She's totally a big jerk. Kimura being Laura's former handler back from when she was X-23, who for some reason was not in the original X-23 miniseries at all, and then was in the second one, like she'd been in the first one all along. It was super weird.
Laura's a Wolverine. She is literally built on retcons, so...
I'm seriously just waiting for the Hamburglar to show up and to have been her partner on every single mission she went on.
I'm not sure that Marvel has that license.
Could be the Ham Murderer from that Onion article. It's a good article.
Anyway, the Kimura, right. So my trouble with her is that she's often boring evil.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's just a really bad person.
Basically, yeah.
And she's not an interesting bad person. Like, she's not interestingly power hungry. Like, honestly, my problem with her is very similar to my problem with a lot of the Weapon X higher ups. Like, they're just villainous.
That being said, having a character who is that utterly without compassion and that merciless, I think that does make a good foil for Wolverine, for Laura.
Yeah.
Just because so much of her journey as a character has been like gaining compassion, gaining those emotional connections to people. And so Kimura is somebody who can take them away, who can bring her back to the baseline of not having any human connection anymore.
So the aspect of Kimura that interests me, and the point of interest for me, and the link actually from here to previous storylines, is B'Elanna.
Mm-hmm. Previous storylines
and how and how she ties into this, because as you mentioned, a lot of Laura's villains are people involved in her creation, or people involved in her training, or people with a vested interest in taking away her agency. Again, that's a common trait among Wolverines.
I mean, that's the whole point of Enemy of the State too. Like, the trigger sent turning her into an assassin again.
Yeah, but in general, that's something that's the case with that was the case with Logan. That's the case with her as well. And pushing back against those tends to be a physical metaphor for pushing back against herself. And we saw that pretty vividly in the Four Sisters storyline. This one I think it's played much more specifically because it's about Laura. It's not Laura trying to save someone else from the same thing. Mm-hmm. But the points of overlap, Gabby and B'Elanna, and how they do or don't tie to Kimura here, are what interests me. And what I think have the potential to make Kimura a more interesting player here than she has been previously.
Yeah, I'm waiting for whatever happens with B'Elanna at the end of the story, because I think it's going to be something awesome and something dramatic, and possibly something tragic, probably something tragic. But that's character development that I think can only be awesome under Taylor's writing. And last, we have Uncanny X-Men number 17, written by Cullen Bunn, with art by Ken Lashley and colors by Nolan Woodard. So, hey, Lashley's back! Yay! We like Lashley. So this is a tie-in to Inhumans versus X-Men, and I gotta say, as a tie-in, it does pretty much what it should. It takes some stuff that happens in the main story and expands on it in a way that develops the characters who are specific to this book without being required reading for Inhumans versus X-Men.
Yeah, in general, the IVX tie-ins, I think, have done a very good job with that.
Yeah, well, I think this is just the second one we've gotten, right? After the Extraordinary one, which was freaking
also
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here we have basically Sabretooth, M, and Rachel Summers as the wardens of the Inhumans that Illyana has put into Limbo. So, cool way of doing it.
And along with M right now, secretly comes M-Plate, her scary people-eating brother.
She's got tongues in her hands. I know it's scary. It totally is scary.
It's also hilarious.
But the fact is she has tongues in her hands.
Yeah, she does.
I don't. Or teeth. Maybe later. But anyway, so I was hoping for something we didn't get, which was a focus on Rachel Summers, because goddamn, I miss that character. And
that got teased and kind of dropped.
It did, and it also did in Civil War II X-Men as well, if you recall. And I don't know, it's been so long since she's been written consistently well. I don't know, we'll see if she's going to be an X-Men Gold. Maybe she'll turn out to be awesome there. I hope so.
I wish more had been done with her in Uncanny, just because I think she and Sabretooth could have been very, very good mutual foils.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah.
But instead we get a story that mostly is about Sabretooth. It's sort of a character study as he goes trying to save the innocent civilian Inhumans who were accidentally brought there with, the Inhuman higher-ups.
Well, and in general, the Inhuman prisoners who are occasionally getting eaten by demons because, Limbo.
Yeah, Limbo's horrible. I do wish that Lashley had done a little more with Limbo.
Yeah.
Just like I wish that Ramos had done more with Limbo and Extraordinary. Like, the whole point of Limbo, as we've talked about, I mean, visually at least, as we've talked about in the podcast, is that an artist can do whatever the hell they want with it. Just like, if they were drawing Warlock, for instance, an artist can really take their own signature style and just take it as far as they want with a world like Limbo.
By the same token, I don't think the colors do much.
Yeah, the colors were kind of subdued.
And I read this digitally, and I don't know if that helped or hurt, because we couldn't get to the comic shop today because, again, snowed in.
Right.
The colors were subdued, but the colors were muddy. Mm-hmm. They were tonally, they flattened the pages. They flattened out the action. And yeah, they didn't really seem to serve the story. And again, likewise, they underlined that we just weren't really getting anything interesting out of Limbo.
Yeah, so that's a shame. I mean, Lashley is a good artist, totally serviceable, and I certainly he is my favorite artist on this book.
And Woodard's colors are for the most part just fine. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think some of it might be that Woodard is used to, or has largely been coloring over Greg Land on this book.
Right, and Land has much sharper art.
And if you look at the colors on this, it's a lot easier to picture them. I think they'd be a better fit for Land's pencils than they are for Lashley's here.
I would totally agree, yeah. But yeah, so, I don't know, Sabretooth has been in a strange place, character-wise, for a long time.
Yeah.
If you remember back in Sixus, okay, fine, Axis.
No, it's Sixus.
Sixus. He got inverted, so he was, like, a good guy all of a sudden. And there wasn't a lot done with that whole thing, with him trying to figure out, you know, like, how to be a hero versus a villain given his history.
Yeah, they basically just made him Age of Apocalypse Sabretooth.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, there were some stabs here and there, but I think this issue is the first time...
Not many literal.
Well, yes. This issue is the first time we've really had a hardcore focus on Sabretooth figuring out what can I do, and his conclusion seems to be, the way I've been doing this doesn't work. That beast is still inside me. How do I handle this? How do I change?
Well, and his idea that doing what he has to contain his own monstrousness is more important than doing any good on a larger level. That he can that it's worth selling his soul, selling out any number of other causes. That he is always the greater danger.
Right, and that's a cool take on the character. That's not just, you know, oh, I have this beast within, but I must be noble, like, you know, Logan or whoever had. This is something different and new and unique to Victor.
Yeah, Sabretooth is not noble.
Right, no.
And I really appreciate that, actually, because I think it would have been way too easy to take him in that direction, or to take him solidly in the direction that AOA Sabretooth went in, say, Exiles, where he was fairly unambiguously a good guy. Right,
yeah, with some stellar sideburns a lot of the time.
Well, yeah, that's just a Weapon X thing, I think.
Probably true.
Did Maverick have sideburns?
He didn't have a nose based on the mask he wore, I'm pretty sure.
Doesn't mean he didn't have sideburns.
Might have had sideburns. But, well, no, we know
Maybe
because...
he traded in his nose for sideburns.
Because Wolverine has, like, the mask that matches his hair, so that implies that unless Maverick had a mask that came out to match his sideburns, he wouldn't have real sideburns. That's just costume logic right there. You heard it here first, folks.
Wolverine's got sideburns and his mask doesn't go out, it just goes down.
Well, you know, but it's got the color part that kind of comes down here that sort of shows where they would be.
Yeah.
It works, trust
Maverick's
me.
covers his whole face, and his whole face isn't covered in hair.
I mean, have you seen his face? I don't think I have. I haven't read a lot of Maverick issues.
In comics. They have a ton of them at the flea market near here. I almost bought them yesterday.
Huh.
And then I didn't because it was Maverick.
The Maverick collection. Do you know that he first appeared on a trading card and he was so new that the trading card got his powers wrong?
I did know that.
Yeah, makes me happy.
They also had Team America #1 for $3, which I also
the motorcycle guys.
Purchasing, yeah.
Nice. Well,
I might still go back.
Anyway, once the snow is less snowy.
I mean, it's really near here.
So the other character the issue focuses on is, since it doesn't focus on Rachel Summers, is M. And I've been wondering where Cullen Bunn was going to take her as far as the whole tongues and hands M-plate possession thing. And this is kind of a cool way to do it. Like, she's super dark and messed up because of what happened with IVX, but she's got a more personal stake because she was super close to Jamie Madrox, who, you know, died.
Well, and how hard she's justifying M-plate's actions and the idea that she's still in control. It's really good writing of that particular character. Like, that works really well for me. And just being like, no, this is actually what I want, and just doing anything to rationalize that she's not gradually losing control.
Well, and especially, like, contrasted right up against what Sabretooth is going through. Like, Cullen Bunn is doing fascinating things with these characters. Like, this book in general, I've been a little lukewarm on.
Well, the art has not served
that's
this
part of
well.
why with Lance art, yeah. But Bunn knows these characters, and seeing Bunn get to do a more character-focused book coming up in Resurrection, I'm super excited about. So there we go. 2 weeks of books, 4 books total. What is our favorite?
Our pick of the fortnight is Old Man Logan #16. It's a really fun genre romp that makes great use of the strengths of the creative team and is taking the book in a new and interesting direction with a lot of attention to what came before. What's our panel?
Panel is also from Old Man Logan.
My God.
Yes. So, minor spoiler, he fights a Venom symbiote-infected Tyrannosaurus Rex at one point, which... That sentence is just amazing regardless of the context. You could throw that into literally any comic and it would make me happy.
You could throw that into literally any story or anything with a narrative structure.
What? And then there was a venom-infected symbiote.
Okay, look, that is basically Beowulf.
Okay, well, yeah, that kind of is, actually. Anyway, so this panel right here, what I like about it is that with Sorrentino's art, you can't always tell what's happening texture-wise because his texture is just so textury, detailed. I don't know. But what clued me in on what was going on here first was not, black goo oozing off the Tyrannosaurus, but was one of Sorrentino's trademark, non-standard weird panel designs that in this case serves a wonderful function of x-raying inside the Tyrannosaurus as it freaking eats Logan, while also telling us exactly what's going on and sort of evoking, the history of the character in general. It's a good way to explain and highlight what's up without having to do it in words, which for a book like Old Man Logan that, is a book of few words at many times, that works super well. Plus, there's a Tyrannosaurus infected with a venom symbiote, and that just makes me happy. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching.
If you like what you've seen here but would prefer it without our faces, check out our podcast, Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men. New episodes come out every Sunday on iTunes, Stitcher, and at explainthexmen.com. Oh, and on Google Play. I keep on forgetting that we're back there. What have we got for them this week?
This week we have the third and final Excalibur Cross Time Caper episode.
Oh, thank God.
It's the last 4 chapters. It's kind of weird. There's some awesome Alan Davis art, but only for part of it. There's some really cool concepts. There's so much subtext with Kitty, you guys. I don't
it's
even know.
It's not even subtext anymore.
It's just basically text. So, yes, join us and we'll talk about British things and alternate realities and Crusader X's and all kinds of good stuff.
That podcast, these video reviews, and everything at explainthexmen.com are brought to you by our Patreon subscribers. We are an entirely listener-supported project, and those are the folks who keep us on the air and ad-free. If you'd like to join their august ranks, you can do that at the link either above or below this video, depending on where you're watching it.
In the meantime, we will see you in a week or two, provided we can ever get out through this maze of ice and hell. Are we in Jotunheim? Are we in the icy realm of the giants?
I don't know, but I think the obvious next step is to fight a Tyrannosaurus infected with his venom symbiote.
Legit.
Okay, so you try one.
Secret Wars 2 with the Beyonder. And then he fights a symbiote infected...
No, to do it, you have to summarize the plot. So, for instance, Oh,
I see.
On the edge of the Civil War, 4 sisters struggle to, keep their family supported, retain their individual identities, and so forth, and also to fight a Tyrannosaurus infected with his venom symbiote.
Okay, so Jodie Foster mourns the loss of her father, throws herself into science, possibly meets God while on a spaceship a rich guy gave her, and then she fights a Tyrannosaurus Rex infected with a venom symbiote.
Exactly.